The 29th of September 1990. On the streets of Belfast, the largest ever gathering of Orangemen. It was the climax to the tercentenary of the Battle of the Boyne. Tens of thousands of Orangemen were on parade. They came from all over the world, a unique gathering for a very special occasion. At the head of the parade, King William III, Prince of Orange. Behind him, 600 Williamite soldiers. 300 years on, the army that won the Battle of the Boyne was on the march again. As the parade weaved its way through Belfast, thousands of people lined the route. It was one of the biggest crowds ever seen in Northern Ireland, a spectacular end to an historic year for the community. At the heart of the celebrations was a battle fought 300 years ago in what is now the Republic of Ireland. As the armies of King William and King James faced each other across the Boyne, they could not have realised just how important the outcome would be. The war fought in Ireland was a significant part of the Glorious Revolution, which began in 1688. James II, King of England, fled to France and was declared to have abdicated. England and Scotland abandoned James because he was a Roman Catholic king, pursuing Roman Catholic policies. Ireland remained loyal to him, mainly for the very same reason. William and Mary were proclaimed king and queen. William was the Dutch son-in-law and nephew of James. Mary was the Protestant daughter of James. The Ireland of that time was firmly under the control of James' supporters, the Jacobites. Only Derry and Enniskillen defied James. William's main purpose in becoming King of England was to bring England into the alliance against Louis XIV of France. Louis hoped to keep William occupied in Ireland and urged James to go there and fight for his throne. Louis's support for James ensured that there would be war in Ireland, and it would be part of the war in Europe.
For me, and I think as I read history, it meant first and foremost the establishment of William as the King of the British Isles. In other words, in a year when he had already suffered a defeat in a naval engagement and in a Scottish engagement, if he had suffered defeat at the Boyne, then I would hesitate to say what might have happened in historical terms. I think it would have been a catastrophe for democracy and for the Protestant cause. On the other side of the coin, of course, it meant the defeat of Louis XIV, Louis XIV, the Sun King, because he was the one really behind James, not only in James's attempt to recapture the throne of England, but to impose his own form of despotism upon the islands.
Throughout 1990, the Orange calendar was crammed with events held to commemorate the tercentenary. One of the first was the annual Junior Orange Parade on Easter Tuesday. And because of the year's special significance, the 4 junior counties of Armagh, Belfast, Down and Tyrone marched together. It was the first time they had done so since 1975, when the Junior Association celebrated its 50th anniversary. The Junior Grand Lodge was joined by representatives from Scotland and England. Junior lodges have been operating in Ireland since the 1880s, and through the decades they have provided a solid recruiting ground for the senior ranks. In its early days, the junior order was concentrated in the Belfast area, but over recent years it has flourished throughout Northern Ireland. At most Orange events during the year, it was easy to see a renewed focus on history. A young William and Mary walked proudly among the ranks, setting the scene for the rest of the year.
People have had to look into the roots, discovered some skeletons and discovering some facts that they weren't aware of before. And all through the land, from both traditions, there are people who are re-examining it, and it's welcoming for me to discover that there are Roman Catholic scholars and nationalist scholars who recognise the profound significance of the Battle of the Boyne, and on the other hand, on the Protestant side, where there were some who had been brainwashed to think it had no significance, they now realise it was full of significance.
Carrickfergus was the starting point for King William's military campaign in Ireland. The castle that dominates the town had been held by the Jacobite army. But the Duke of Schomberg, King William's general, laid siege to it for 7 days in 1689 and forced out the Jacobites. The following year, on Saturday the 14th of June, soldiers of the Williamite army prepared to meet their king.
Squad! Good shot! By the front, left whale, slow, march!
King William landed at the pier in Carrickfergus after sailing from Hoylake near Liverpool. It was his first time in Ireland. That key moment in history was brought to life as part of the tercentenary celebrations. Thousands of people watched the reenactment of the famous landing, the welcome from town dignitaries of the time, and the inspection of the soldiers. History records that William met a Quaker as he walked along the quay. By throwing his hat to the ground, the Quaker showed an uncommon respect for monarchy. William acknowledged him as the best-bred gentleman he had met. The Quaker was invited to join William's party. And as local man Brian Blair continued his walkabout, it was back to the 20th century for a rousing welcome.
On exactly the same spot that King William came ashore all those years ago. He actually brought with him a mobile home.
With its castle and narrow streets, Carrickfergus still retains some of its character from 1690. As King William made his way through the crowd, there was a merging of the 17th and 20th centuries. To commemorate the historic landing of William in Carrickfergus, the local council held a special ceremony.
The tercentenary of the landing of William of Orange will only occur once. The And I trust that we appreciate the privilege that Providence has provided us with, that we can be part of that great occasion.
The Mayor was assisted by Captain Robert Dobbs, Her Majesty's Lieutenant for County Antrim. The King William of 1990 stood proudly in Carrickfergus Harbour, looking out to sea from where the King William of 300 years before had come. From Carrickfergus, King William made the short journey to Belfast, and again pageant brought history to life as thousands turned out to welcome him.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lord Mayor.
After being handed the keys of the city, there was a triumphant walk through the crowd.
Everyone was shouting for Keen Billy and they wanted to shake hands, which is, quite normal. So I went over and started shaking hands with the people. I think the poor Lord Mayor, he stood in the middle of Royal Avenue and nobody shouted, Fred, would you like to come and shake hands with me? It was all sort of, people wanted their children to go home and sort of say, we shook hands with Keen Billy last night. There was more honour in shaking hands with a commoner acting Keen Billy than there was actually in shaking hands with the Lord Mayor that evening. I think by the time we got to Royal Avenue, my adrenaline was pumping through my veins so quick, you're almost numb. The people just keep reaching out their hands and you just shake his hands with as many people as you can, cross from one side of the road to the other, so you don't ignore everyone on just one side. And you just carry on, do your best. And the people really, I think what happens is you get lost in the whole atmosphere. The people actually were so excited and so pleased to see this little bit of pageantry.
There was also a solemn and spiritual side to the tercentenary year. St Patrick's Cathedral in Armagh was the setting for a church service on a July evening. Services were held all over Northern Ireland, as Orangemen were asked to remember the religious foundations of their institution. And from the pulpit, a reminder of the Battle of the Boyne and the significance it had on the Protestant community.
We remember with thanksgiving that our forefathers gave unwavering loyalty and support to King William III, and through their sacrifice helped to lay the foundations
of a constitutional monarchy. That belief in the concept of monarchy has remained consistent all down the years. We have it to this very present day.
One of the most traditional events on the Orange calendar is the 11th night bonfire. They are held all over Northern Ireland, on the streets of the cities and towns, and alongside narrow country roads. For the people of Rathfriland in County Down, their bonfire is as important as any other. In fact, King William, on his way to the Battle of the Boyne, would have passed not far from this area. The lambeg drum rivals the flute as the most traditional of Orange instruments, although its origin is unclear. Folklore says it was brought to Ireland from Holland by soldiers of the Duke of Schomberg, William's second in command at the Boyne. Another theory is that the first lambeg drum was made for the Battle of the Diamond in County Armagh in 1795, after which the Orange Order was reorganised. Whatever the truth, its sound is unique. In Belfast the next morning, the 12th parade had an unusual beginning. Water collected from the Boyne River was sprinkled across the street. The Orange men then began their parade by marching through the Boyne water.
Just not on the Martin, just not on the I didn't want to get it too far.
The parade through Belfast was the biggest of a number of demonstrations held all over Northern Ireland. The Orange men followed their traditional route through the city centre and into the suburbs of South Belfast. A steady rain failed to dampen the enthusiasm, although on occasions the umbrellas outnumbered the banners. When the parade reaches the demonstration field at Edenderry, the bands and the Orange men have a chance to relax before the homeward journey. There's a chance to sit down and take a well-earned rest, catch up with the gossip, or treat tired legs. For many, the day out would not be complete without the colour and sounds of the field. It's at the demonstration fields that the Orange Order adopts a more serious tone, with speeches and resolutions designed to underline the institution's policy on Northern Ireland. The messages given from the various platforms are seen as the key part of the 12th.
The 1690-1990 tercentenary celebrations are expressions of our gratitude to Almighty God for deliverance through his servant, King William III, Prince of Orange, from the religious and political tyrannies which were being forced upon our ancestors by King James II and the Roman Catholicism which he sponsored so vigorously.
As we thank God for deliverance from tyranny and arbitrary power under William III, we reject emphatically the present manifestation of such power under the guise of the Anglo-Irish Agreement. And in our resolution we are saying here quite clearly, we will not forever accept calmly the paternalism of the Northern Ireland Office and the interference of the Irish Republic in our affairs.
The 12th parades held in the towns and villages of Northern Ireland are smaller than the Belfast demonstration, but are every bit as much a day out for the community. In County Fermanagh, Enniskillen was the venue for the parade in 1990. It was a fitting location in such an historic year. The Williamite Wars could have had a different outcome if it had not been for the role played by the town of Enniskillen and its fighting men. Before the parade got properly underway, there was a poignant reminder of the loss of life from more recent times. A wreath was laid at the Enniskillen War Memorial, a tribute to the 11 people murdered there in the Remembrance Day bombing of 1987.
at the going down of the sun, and in the morning. We will remember them. We will remember them.
As the Orangemen marched through the streets of Enniskillen, they were joined by visitors from all over the world, including a band from Vancouver in Canada, with its historic name of Enniskillen.
And finally, our thanks to all the brothers, sisters, juniors and the bands who have turned up here today. They all paraded in the most disciplined and honourable manner.
The hills of County Donegal in the Irish Republic, a beautiful setting for the annual 12th parade in Rossnowla. It's a demonstration which has a unique character. The pipes and drums compete against the sounds of the countryside and the sea. The air is fresh. For many, the mood is of holidays. For the Orange Order, their traditional day out in the Irish Republic is of great importance.
Orangeism seems to be on the increase in Donegal, and we're very pleased with that, and we hope that maybe in another 100 years' time there'll be a service here doing the same thing.
The Rossnowla demonstration takes place on the western seaboard of Europe. at the very edge of the continent that was so greatly influenced by the Battle of the Boyne. The influence of the Orange Order doesn't stop at this outpost of Europe. Thousands of miles away across the sea, the Orange Order continues to operate in a very different environment. Toronto, in the language of the North American Indian, it means meeting place. And for so many Ulster Scots, it has been the gateway to Canada and a new life. Situated on the shore of Lake Ontario, the city is the largest in the country.
The sun and cloud, the high only 24, but ahead to Thursday looking much better.
So 400 flows from Finch down to the 401, westbound 401 busy from the Allen to west of Kiel.
And we have a bunch of new releases. Actually, some good stuff's come out in the last week or so. One final look at what's happening in the streets of Toronto this afternoon. Here
Westbound, it's busy from the Jarvis on.
Outside the British Isles, Orangeism has had its strongest base in Canada. At one time during the 19th century, 1 in 3 of male adults in the Protestant population of Canada held membership. For a long time, political progress in Toronto depended on lodge affiliation. 60 years ago, there were 100,000 members of the Orange Order in Canada. The figure now is around 25,000, still a significant number.
I've had the privilege of traveling across Canada with this honor, visiting the provinces, and I've been certainly overwhelmed by the response that's given to me because of the fact that I am the Imperial, or was elected to the office of Imperial Grand Master.
For the Brownlee family, the Orange Order has been a way of life.
We definitely are the first couple from Canada, and they tell us that probably it has never happened anywhere before, that husband and wife have been Grand Master and Sovereign and Grand Mistress at the same time.
Orangeism in Canada can be traced back to 1799. The Grand Lodge of Canada was formed in 1831, among others by Ogle Gowan, the son of a Wexford landlord.
The 300th anniversary, with the information that goes out with it, has certainly awakened and has reawakened the knowledge or a desire to know more about our own history and the history of our origins. And in particular, it gives the Orangemen in Canada some sort of insight into the events that led up to the events of 300 years ago. A little idea of why we exist and why such a revolution was considered necessary in those days.
The city of Toronto has a large population of Italians. A small group of them are in the Orange Order.
The reason why we do have an Orange Lodge is because, as you may know, at the turn of the century here in Toronto, the city was a predominantly Anglo-Saxon Protestant city, and there were Italians here who had become members of the Methodist Church. So the Methodist Church was organized in the city of Toronto, Methodist Italian Church that is, in 1905, and some of our members had joined an Orange Lodge. 3 of them, in fact, joined an Orange Lodge, and after a year or 2 they had decided perhaps that it would be a good idea to form a lodge composed entirely of Italian Canadians.
North America is a vast continent of many ethnic groups. The Indians were there first, and despite many difficult times, still know how to enjoy themselves. At the Tyne-Denega Indian Reserve, about 2 hours' drive from Toronto, the Mohawks are a proud people with a history stretching back centuries. At the end of the 18th century, they had to leave their ancestral valley in New York State after declaring allegiance to the British Crown around the time of the American War of Independence. They are fiercely loyal to the Crown, and some of them served in the First and Second World Wars. That loyalty to the Crown and contact with Orangemen led to the formation of an Orange Lodge in 1843. Mohawk LOL 99 once had 140 members. Now there are only about 15 left, but they still meet regularly in an Orange Hall on the Indian Reserve. There is also a Women's Orange Lodge.
Well, it's special to everybody, you know, that's in the Orange Order. It don't matter where you are, it's special here, really. It's the whole thing as far as the, you know, anniversary at the beginning. And we are tied to the Queen, tighter than anybody else, I think, because we were loyal to the Queen in the American Revolution. And so that we've never lost our loyalty to the Queen. And so anything that has to do and honor the Queen, why we're 100% for it.
I really enjoy myself. I get out to all the meetings. And we get around to the other lodges and enjoy their company when they come here.
I read a lot of work that King William, adventures that King William had done from the time he started when he left Holland. And that gave me such an interest in the affair. And my father was an Orangeman when he passed on in the 70s. My grandfather was an Orangeman, and he went in when he was 18. He passed away at 92 years old.
There are still many Orange Halls scattered throughout the Canadian countryside, but the story is different along highways of the United States of America. Orangism did reach the US in 1820 and grew rapidly. It has lodges in 11 of the 52 states. In 1990, the biannual meeting of the Supreme Grand Orange Lodge of America was held in the Sunshine State of Florida, although in the month of August, more often than not, rain was the order of the day. After several days of meetings, the delegates relaxed in a typically American fashion with a pool party.
Have a good day tomorrow. Oh, all right. Right. Did you jump?
No, tail down.
Open your shirt.
Like their Orange colleagues throughout the world, the tercentenary year provided the opportunity to look again at their history.
Just meeting now here in Florida, which is sort of unusual for us. Normally we meet where one of the jurisdictions would be, either Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, California. This year we're meeting here in Florida where we really don't have any Orange Lodges. So this is a get-together, just an absolute special one, because William of Orange means a lot to us over here. Many of the things that he stood for, we brought along to the United States, and many of them are in our Constitution.
As Orange men and women all over the world commemorate the Battle of the Boyne 300 years ago, the river itself continues to flow steadily through the Irish countryside, giving away few secrets about that famous day in 1690.
One morning fair, as I did stroll down by my sweet Boyne side, the flowers in bloom, the birds did sing, the sun was shining bright. On vines so green I made my way, by rippling waters clear. The smells of summer filled the air, sweet sounds that fill my ears. On bossy vines I did sit down, a rest I wish to take. The sun that shone upon my face, its rested warm my brow. The rippling waters sang to me a haunting lullaby, and into sleep I gently crept to dream of days gone by. July the 1st, a morning clear to armies greeted me. William and James from distant lands in war they did embrace. To Boyne's green vines they made their way to fight for God and crown. The sounds of battle filled the air, my Boyne she flowed like wine. Came screams of pain from dying men, the soil with blood-stained red. As cavalry charged and cannon roared, the sky it rained with lead. But through smoke the flags did fly, the orange and the green. And then at last a cheer we hear, King James has fled the field. King James to Dublin he did ride, and then to France did flee. King William's men had won the day, the Boyne their victory. And still my river gently flows, a tear in Ireland's side. For on that day brave men had died to gain our liberty.
King William's army arrived on the northern banks of the River Boyne on the 30th of June 1690. The battle that followed was brought back to life by the Orange Order at a reenactment near Cookstown, at the birthplace of the Reverend George Walker, Governor of Londonderry during the siege. As the two armies faced each other across the river, William held a council of war. His two most senior generals, Marshal Schomberg and Count Solmes, favoured different plans of action. William listened carefully to their opinions.
I believe that he was a very able tactician and a very masterly general. It had been proven in his earlier years in his homeland as he held the Netherlands together against invaders. Sometimes people have criticised his actions at the Boyne, and they have said that Schomberg suggested a flank attack, Solmes wanted a frontal attack, and William was indecisive and therefore decided to combine the two. I actually believe that he took the best of both plans and used them, and the end result was a successful military victory.
The course of the Battle of the Boyne, and indeed the history of Europe, could have so easily been different. As William carried out a reconnaissance of the Jacobite forces, he was struck on the shoulder by a cannonball. He fell from his horse, and rumours spread like wildfire through the ranks of his men that he had been killed. But within a short time, the Williamite soldiers were to learn that there was no substance to the rumour. Their leader was alive, although throughout the battle he did have his luck.
William was wounded the night before the battle when he was reconnoitring along the banks of the Boyne, and a ricochet cannon shot hit him in the shoulder. In actual fact, news spread very, very quickly on both sides of the river that William had died, and bonfires were lit in both Dublin and Paris. He obviously didn't. He recovered from that to lead his troops into action on the next day, and he was constantly in the thick of that action. On two occasions he came very close to death. On the first, the cap of his pistol was shot off, and on the second, the heel of his jackboot was shot off by a musket ball.
King William had an army of about 35,000 men. Most Protestant nations were represented. About half the soldiers were Englishmen. A number of them had earned good reputations in several battlefields. The Germans, Dutch, Danes and Finns included some of the finest soldiers in Europe. Among the most committed soldiers of all were the French Huguenots, able to gain revenge for the cruel treatment they had received in France. Many famous Irish regiments, including the heroes of Londonderry and Enniskillen, also took their place in the Williamite army. King James had an army of about 25,000, 10,000 less than William. About a third were very good French cavalry and equally fine Irish cavalry. The Irish foot soldiers were poorly trained and lacked discipline. That weakness would be exposed later. On the morning of the 1st of July in the old-style calendar, the general call to arms woke the Williamite army. 3 hours later, Count Schomberg, son of William's marshal, set off to Rossnaree. The ford there was defended by only 500 men under Sir Neil O'Neill. They were soon overwhelmed, O'Neill being mortally wounded. James believed that this was to be the main attack and ordered half of his army to guard the flank. By doing so, he weakened the centre of his line at Oldbridge. The Jacobite soldiers there were outnumbered 3 to 1. At 10 o'clock on the 1st of July, William ordered his main attack. The Dutch Blue Guards marched towards the Boyne. It was during this stage of the battle that Marshal Schomberg and the Reverend George Walker were killed. The Jacobite army fought with tenacity, but they were heavily outnumbered as William ordered more men forward. The drum beat heralded the arrival of yet another regiment.
In terms of casualties, the Boyne itself was not big. You had something like 36,000 Williamite troops, 25,000 Jacobite troops. Casualties amounted to 1,000 Jacobites, about 500 Williamites, so it certainly wasn't a bloody battle by any stretch of the imagination. In terms of duration, it didn't last terribly long, but it was important in the sense that it won control of Dublin for William, and James fled Ireland. He was never again to set foot on British soil.
The Battle of the Boyne was significant in a military context. The victory for William also had far-reaching consequences.
If the Boyne had not happened, would Britain have had a revolution along the lines of the French Revolution 100 years later? Possibly. If the Boyne hadn't happened, what would have been the state of affairs in America with the Declaration of Independence? Because when you look at the Declaration of Independence, you're almost reading word for word the Bill of Rights of King William III. There were tremendous ramifications. On this, the 300th anniversary, Orangemen throughout the world have realised afresh just how important the Boyne was.
The importance of King William's victory at the Boyne was underlined on the 29th of September in the centre of Belfast, the Tercentenary Parade. The famous regiments that changed the course of history walked along the 20th century streets in their 17th century costumes. And included in the parade, the man they defeated, King James. The parade brought together the largest pageant of the entire tercentenary year, as thousands marched and many more watched. Orange leaders from all over the world walked shoulder to shoulder, a truly impressive gathering which may never be repeated. A short distance behind them, the young William and Mary. Earlier in the year, they had signalled that 1990 would be different. As the parade made its way through Belfast, the women of the Orange Association took their place. On occasions, they were hidden by a sea of umbrellas, stretching as far as the eye could see. Charting a course through the streets was the Mountjoy, which relieved the siege of Derry. This one built by Orangemen from Belfast. And making their first ever visit to Northern Ireland, members of Mohawk LOL 99. It was a long way from their homes on an Indian reserve in Canada, but they were left in no doubt about the welcome.
The people that we saw, I know what kind of a reception we were getting, it was terrific. And we've been on parades before, and we've got good receptions, but nothing like this. We never had that many people watch us before.
Never seen a parade like it in my life, as long as I've been in the order. First time I've ever seen anything like that at all.
I noticed an expression on people's face that like as if that was the first time they ever seen an Indian. And it made me feel good. Proud to be an Indian and an Orange.
It's one of the largest parades that I've ever participated in. And the reception was enormous. There was a lot. We joked with that we're imitating Indians and everything, and that really made a person feel great, feel good.
70,000 Orange men were on parade, marching to the Strangford playing fields in South Belfast.
Ravages either of siege or battle, rather than surrender.
There, the Grand Master summarised the year's celebrations that were drawing to a close.
1690 was a memorable and historic year in Ireland, in Britain, in European and in world history. There are those who try to ignore that, but they can't. They can't write it out of history. They may try to say that it was a mere skirmish on an Irish riverbank between a Dutch king and an English king, his father-in-law, on Irish soil for an English crown. But there were far more things involved in that skirmish, as they call it, and men and women today throughout the world, not only in our Orange family, but those who have any sense of history, thank God that it was William won at the Boyne and not Louis and his vassal James II of England and the 7th of Scotland.
The tercentenary year was the commemoration of a battle fought 300 years ago. As Orange men took part in their marches and pageants, the debate about the Battle of the Boyne continued. The events surrounding one day's fighting on a riverbank in what is now the Irish Republic have led to many different views. One thing is certain, the battle changed the course of history all over the world and will continue to have its influence, particularly through the Orange Order and its members, as they march into another century.